Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy Roden, and welcome to Ep.02 of Halfway. And tonight, I am so excited to be hosting our next guest because this individual had a tremendous impact on my life and the lives of others, especially early career for me when I had the opportunity to work on the animated film Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. Mr. Keith Alcorn, writer, director, and producer, is here tonight. Thank you for being here. Take us on a journey. Tell us some of these stories. What are some of the early influences in your life? How did this all start? How did we get to what you're doing today?
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me to be on your show. In terms of my background, native Texan, went to school here in Texas. I have worked in the industry in Texas. It's always been a Texas-based production, anything I've worked on. What kind of took me in this direction? To be honest, it was just watching cartoons when I was a kid. I got half an hour every day to watch cartoons, and not because my parents were strict, it's because that's all we had. My favorites were the Looney Tunes. They were fantastic, and I didn't go to animation school. I really am self-taught. I would take old 16 millimeter films and break them down on a flatbed editor and find how they were doing the things that these amazing animators and directors were doing. And I would just thumbnail it out and figure it out based on studying old classic cartoons.
How old were you when you started to kind of experiment and try to figure things out with the animation?
I was probably late junior high, when I was figuring out stop motion and how many frames per second. And if I do this for 1 second, what will it look like? Is that too slow? Is it too fast? You're just trying all this stuff and shooting on film. And I had an old Brownie camera that really wasn't made for stop motion, but I figured it out anyway. And
Making it work, yeah.
yeah, just trying to make it work and doing everything the hard way and the wrong way. Eventually got to the point where I understood what was happening and how these masters of animation did what they did.
Keith, when you started to experiment and figure things out, it makes me think of a time when I was at North Texas undergrad, and there was no animation program. We actually started a club or society called A&D, Absolutely No Degree Computer Animation Society. We were in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and in the Denton paper. I think it was a school paper. We ended up meeting the president, the provost, trying to get funding, for this program. But people started noticing what we were doing, and two of my really good friends, one I haven't talked to in a while because he's moved across country, very talented, also worked on Jimmy Neutron. The other still talk with weekly, and has worked on some amazing films, Ready Player One being one of them. But we started to teach ourselves. We started to find any resource we could, whether it was a VHS tape or some TV, behind the scenes commercial, and watching what the studios had, what programs they were using, Softimage and all of that. Jurassic Park and Starship Troopers was coming out. Like, it was just overload. But people started seeing us and we started learning from one another. So can you talk about when you were experimenting, figuring things out? You didn't have access to, obviously, YouTube. When did people start to notice and you started to get your little club or your group of friends working in the same thing that ended up blossoming into, DNA Productions at one point?
Well, when I was in college at UTA, there were one or two other people that were interested in animation. One of them was a guy Tim Hatcher.
Yeah.
And he was an animator at DNA Productions, and he went on and worked at Real Effects for a number of years. He and I were doing some animation, and there were a couple of other people that were dabbling in it. But it wasn't really until I got into the business that I started finding other people with similar interests. When I started as a cameraman. I wasn't actually animating anything. I was just shooting animation. And so I was on the camera and I was working in the art department with a couple of people, and they would come back and help me shoot sometimes. And, Then I would come up and then help do in-betweens and inking and painting back in the old days when you had the ink on cells, flip it over and paint on the back. And, it was it was a thing. Once I got into that, then we actually started forming a club kind of like you did in college. We actually put together a film festival, and we had it at a company that was at the time called Bill Stokes Associates. We had it on their sound stage, and we had 200 people come to it. And it was just a collection of animated shorts. And we actually created animated opens and closes. And one of the guys made a film that was in the competition. And when you realize, wow, there's other people that love this just as much as I do and have been influenced by a lot of the same things and the same people I was.
You mentioned real effects. I went to high school with Brandon Oldenburg at Richland High School in Northern Hills, Texas. And when he teamed up with William Joyce, my wife knew exactly who Bill was because of her work with children's book authors back in the day. And I actually saw Brandon the week before the Oscars, before they won the Academy Award for Morris Les Moore's Fantastic Flying Books.
Yeah.
Incredible talent back in high school, and then what he did at Real Effects and then beyond at Moonbot was incredible. In fact, Bill Joyce still lives in Shreveport. When you finally felt like you had some skills, you had this, this film festival, what lessons were you learning during those times, 1985, where you felt like it was an absolute failure, or there were some wins and you're like, okay, there's a reason why I need to continue doing this. Like you feel like, I remember when I was trying to learn animation and computer graphics, all of that, because I was a fine artist. I was a studio artist, and then discovered animation. I was like, wow, I can actually have a career here. My father and I would talk about it quite a bit because he was worried, starving artist. But when he discovered that I was exploring production before he passed away, that was I saw a sense of calm in him, and I'll never forget that day because he saw that I was actually applying myself and I'm actually going to have a career. But what lessons were you learning back then where if you did have a failure or whatever it was, that you just wanted to keep going? Because I was intimidated by so many various artists, and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And that just looks so hard. But then when you start learning and you meet somebody who's willing to teach you something, you get a little bit more confident. So can you tell us some stories there about some of those lessons that just kept you going?
Yeah, it's funny because one of the great lessons I learned was I always tell this to young people now is just be nice to everybody. And because when I met John Davis, who was my partner at DNA Productions, I was nervous that rightfully so that and concerned that he was out to take my job because here's this young guy right out of SMU Film School. He's super talented. He's doing this amazing live action stop motion combo film and it looks amazing and he wants to learn the animation stand, which is my job. And I thought, no, this guy could pretty easy have my job. And so at first I wasn't like overly forthcoming with him, in terms of, well, he would ask me, wow, what is this doing? What is this doing?
Why is
And I'm
this
like,
guy so nice?
and no, I wasn't. Is the thing is that I wasn't at first, and I'm like, well, you know how it is. And he's like, well, I don't understand, and it's like, well, it'll come to you. And but then we started getting to know each other actually through this is around 1985 and we started to get to know each other through music and our mutual love for music, synth pop, new wave, all that is, it's just flooding the airwaves and he was playing stuff that I'd never heard before. And I was like, wow, this is great. Who is that? And he's like, oh, it's so and so. And then he'd say, you want to listen to it? And he'd let me, borrow his music and like, oh man, I've been so wrong to this guy. I need to be nicer to him. And so I, started being nice to him and teaching him what I knew. And, he took that and applied it to his next film. And, he was doing all this amazing stuff. And then he was hired at a competitor studio. And then he ended up hiring me over there
Wow.
when the the studio I was at shut down its art department. So it's like, see, be nice because you
Yeah.
never
Yeah. Being
know.
nice matters. Yeah.
It does. And you should be nice anyway. But and we worked together, and that's where, when that studio closed, because the owners of the studio, great guys, Rod Kites and Tom Young, were the owners of a place called K&H Productions, and they were doing some of the great, great, great things. I mean, like old Dr. Pepper ads, old intermission ads, the like, let's all go to the lobby kind of things.
The dancing popcorn and all. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah. They were
concession. Yeah.
doing all that kind of stuff. And, there was a mascot for Dr. Pepper at one point, Frosty the dog, and doing commercials with him. And we ended up throwing so much of that away in the dumpster, and no telling what it'd be worth now. But, it's just, we worked together there. And that's where as it was closing, the owners were retirement age, and they were ready to move on, change their life, and kind of sit back and relax a little bit. And that was the last animation studio in Texas at one point.
Wow. Yeah.
That was it. And so we're like, well, gosh, this is either great for us, John and I, or this is horrible for us. One of the two. We've got two options.
We got to go get other jobs. We got to go,
Yeah.
jobs we don't want. Yeah.
And so we decided, like, you know what? Why don't we try, see what we can do? Neither one of us had any business experience, had not had one business class in college. But why don't we try starting a business, and with no clients and no way to really know where to go to find them, let's start our own company and see what happens. And okay, sure. And so we did in 1987. And there was no internet back then. Couldn't look people up as, or companies up or artists or anything, no websites. We had to go to the library and go through phone books and find under P for producer, or, D for director, or something like that, or A for ad agency, and just start copying down stuff. We had note cards, and I've still got them.
Hmm.
Our original note cards with clients that most, if not all of them, don't exist as companies anymore. But that's what we would do. We'd just go and then we'd call people, calling them saying, hey, could you use any animation today? Because I think we were both too dumb to realize this isn't the way you do it. You go in with a much more thought out battle plan
Business
than
plan.
this.
You're
Yeah.
doing the equivalent of like knocking on doors. Can I mow your lawn today? Or,
Which is something I did too before.
Yeah, I did too. Oh yeah.
I
My
went
first
into
job.
college. It was an interesting time. I mean, I would say our first year as DNA, every Friday, we would look at each other and like, well, you want to give it one more week?
Wow.
Okay. And it was that way. We would be doing all the sales. We would be doing all the production, all the collection, and then starting the process all over again. And it was hard to guys. Paul Clarehout was actually our first employee.
Yeah, I do remember that you tell me that.
And I never, ever had buyer's remorse more than I did at that point. And not because Paul isn't awesome. It's just because now I was responsible for somebody else. Even when we hired 100 people for the Jimmy Neutron movie, it was like, oh, it's okay. It'll all be fine.
I'm going to talk about two things here, but one, I think we've talked about it maybe at lunch or dinner sometime. Maybe when we did get to work a little bit later on with a different organization together, educational technology company, which was an amazing experience. It's like I get to work with Keith Alcorn again. But when I was still at North Texas, I found DNA Productions phone number in the phone book. And I called you guys one day and you answered the phone. And here's this kid calling, asking about animation, computer animation. I mean, this was way before all of the other reindeer. And you were on the phone with me like 30 minutes talking to me about the industry. And I thought that was the greatest thing. And then, flash forward when I was working on the movie, what I saw was you always cared about those around you. And I've tried to emulate that in the things that I've been doing in my career, the people that I've led, the people that I'm responsible for. I really do care, and my friends, right? I do think that's important. And so can you talk a little bit about that character trait that you have and how that has led you to have the success you've had?
I've always believed that if I can help people do their job better, then I have a better team. If I am relying on everybody to figure it out on your own. I didn't hire you because, I'm going to teach you. I've got things to do, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I mean, if I take the time and, maybe something I say will make a difference, will light a spark, and they'll go, oh, maybe this. And, even if it was something where I was reprimanding somebody for something, I would talk to them. It wasn't just gripe and yell and all this stuff. It was like, okay, here's why you're in here, and here's why we can't do that anymore. And because what happens when your attitude goes south like that, you just shut down the room, and there's a decent chance, better than 50% chance, you'll never get it back. That's
Yeah.
why
I think there's a relationship in what you just described, caring about other people, listening to them, helping them along the way, rather than just going in there thinking that you know everything as the leader, right? And, to me, that creates a very unstable environment oftentimes where then the trust starts to become a problem and you're not getting the best out of that employee. With my son in sports, the coaches that have pulled him up, taught him a skill, and then let him try, whether he's successful or failed, they can then take a more accurate assessment and make an adjustment. And they're getting more out of that. And I know the coaches in several sports that has happened. And I was like, that's the coaching style. That's why if you look at some of these college athletes these days that gravitate to some of these coaches, there's a relationship there. So as a leader, I think it's the same thing. When you are
absolutely.
responsible for other people, you need to, draw the best out of them. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It was a vibe that John and Paul and myself fostered. We were all good friends before we started the company, and we had a atmosphere of friendship. It's like, if you come in here, chances are you're going to be our friend. So you might want to get ready for that. Paul is really the master animator in the group. When he was teaching somebody something, very patient. John was very patient. I tried to always instill a feeling of, hey, you know what? It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. It's all right. Some places, and even places I've worked, you don't want to make a mistake or you will be called out in front of everybody and embarrassed. And I've had coaches when I was younger that, you know, did the same thing, well, I'll embarrass them in front of everybody and they won't make that mistake again. It's like, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, now I didn't learn anything other than what utter humiliation feels like. So
They've got to process that emotion while they're trying to learn something else, a skill to
more,
get better and develop. And I mean, I have to remind myself as a parent, they're still kids, right? They're young adults, they're growing, they're still kids. They're still developing, they're still learning. And in business, leading in teams, you probably have the same experience where with that philosophy that you're describing, trust just gets built, the culture gets built. And I think that is what allowed, at least from my experience in the production of Jimmy Neutron, for us to really be in a small space and work well with one another and be able to have conversations when we didn't necessarily agree with one another. Or if we saw something, we're dealing with in lighting continuity and somebody's lighting a shot very similar and it's beautiful and you've been working on your shot, you don't want to go up and tell them, hey, mine looks like this and yours is different. How do we come together? We would have a conversation and realize we were working on the same project.
If you're having a problem, don't sit there and try and struggle and fret over something. Just go to somebody that, hey, I see what you're doing. That's exactly what I want to do. Because you're not going to come into a situation knowing everything. No one does. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help, because the sooner you get help, the sooner you'll finish and you can go on to the next thing. Don't worry that, well, I'm not going to look as good as this person. No one cares. There are things that you're going to do better than them, things they're going to do better than you. I don't care, and I hired you, so what do you care? Just get the help. Let's figure this out. Because I worry much more about a shot that should take 45 minutes to light and you're taking 4 hours. That concerns me a lot more than you going and asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
That shows a level of maturity and confidence I like to see. And people that would reprimand you for something like that, you should know that. It's like, well, you know what? That's just showing me that you don't know that much. And the way you deal with your insecurities is by yelling at people that don't know as much as you.
Do you want to talk about how you met, producers like Steve Odekirk?
Well, this was back around 1997, I believe.
Yeah, I was still an undergrad. Yeah.
We released a short film that was called The Adventures of Johnny Quasar. And it was based on a story that John Davis came up with. And it was a story he was wanting to do originally in live action. But that, CGI was starting to show itself and the possibilities of what we could do, we started doing little experiments with it and like, oh, this looks great. This is a rocket ship that can actually fly. And we don't have to do some kind of cheesy Ed Wood thing. And we started experimenting with CGI. And then we were like, hey, let's do a little short film. And we did, and entered it into the Lightwave SIGGRAPH competition. And I remember like it was a week ago, John thought he'd missed the deadline. And this just shows you, to me, this just shows you how amazing life can be. And I've had so many instances where I can see God's influence in my life and how he's impacted and provided for me and at the time DNA and my family and everything. But John missed the deadline. He was rushing around to try to get it packed up. He called them. They said, sure, go ahead and send it. It'll be a day late, but go ahead and send it. So ran down to FedEx, sent it, came back, and then found out later that it won the whole thing. And if it hadn't won, it wouldn't have been written up in Lightwave magazine. And then it wouldn't have been seen by a producer named Steve Odekirk, who at the time was writing and directing a film called Ace Ventura. It was
When Nature Calls, right?
Nature Calls.
Yeah.
And he reached out to us and asked about, if he could get some more information about Johnny at the time. And so we sent him everything we had. He loved it. He said, I think I can pitch this to Nickelodeon. And it was like, well, okay. And that's exactly the type of thing we were wanting to do. Dallas Fort Worth was very much a commercial and corporate kind of production area.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of corporations in Dallas Fort Worth. And we wanted to get more into entertainment. And so we did that. We met with Steve, and he wasn't even in the pitch with us. He was on the phone, and they were just gushing over him because he was this film writer director guy. And he made it happen. I mean, as as much as, part of you thinks, well, yeah, but we had the product, it didn't matter. They wanted to work with him. And that's why it's important that you have somebody like a Steve Odekirk that is an insurance policy that the networks and studios can look at and go, well, if he's involved in it, okay, we'll take a chance on it. Because they didn't know us.
Yeah,
We'd
yeah.
been around for 13 years. It didn't matter.
It's like
You
pay
know,
attention to people along the way that, the timing and the conversations and,
Mhm.
whether it's luck or something else, those are the things that, make history and really lead down the path to good things. And I remember when you introduced me to Steve Odekirk, and I remember meeting Mike Judge, Office Space, Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
He walked up behind me and was talking with me, and just again the amount of talent and the amount of relationships that were being made during that time, and also when you were building DNA back in the early days of Jimmy.
Let me tell you this story because I know I've told you this story and you've experienced it because you know, you were there shortly after it happened. But uh, back in the 90s, there was a guy, early 90s, actually, there was a guy that came by and he started calling and he'd talk to Paul. Paul was there full time. I was there full time, John. Three guys. And he'd talk to Paul about how do you do this on the animation stand? Then sometimes he'd talk to me or he'd talk to John. And then he'd come in and work on things and we'd show him how to break down soundtracks and we'd show him, different techniques and things to do because he was doing everything the hard way, the hardest way you could possibly do it. And I was just like, oh man, try it this way. and so he would, and he got it. He was real smart, real talented guy. And so he started making these short films about the time we were making short films for festivals like Expanded Entertainment and Spike and Mike and people like that. And then one day he calls and he says, hey, I think I'm going to move. And because he was living in Dallas. And I'm like, oh, well, where are you going? Well, MTV wants to buy my characters and I don't really want to do them anymore. And he didn't want to do these characters anymore. And it's like, well, what'd they offer you? And he says, well, I'll just say this. I could buy a Winnebago with what they offered me. I'm like, okay. And so he goes to New York and at first he just hates it, hates the experience, but then later it gets smoother, gets better. And that guy was Mike Judge,
Incredible.
and he the theme song to Beavis and Butthead, he did at our place and he played everything on it. And I mean, he's just a super talented guy,
Yeah,
funny guy, great writer, director. And yeah, he just, that day you saw him, he just came by just for
just checking
fun.
things out. Yeah,
He just wanted to say hi and he'd
yeah,
heard
super
about
nice. Yeah, super
Jimmy.
nice. And looking over my
Super.
shoulder and asking me about my shot, and I thought that was cool. So seeing that
Yeah.
success over the years, and if you watch his interviews, he's a very funny
Very humble.
storyteller,
Yeah.
and
And
it's like,
and a
wow,
great storyteller.
yeah, yeah, that's incredible. I didn't know some of those details. I knew that it happened because we talked about it, but that's really incredible. But it's those little things that you pay attention to along the way that could turn into something great. And
And,
wow,
and he did not, if you look at, he did two Beavis and Butthead cartoons. And the last one he did was called Peace, Love, and Understanding or something like that. And you can probably find it on YouTube. And at the very end, it says to be discontinued. And because he didn't want to do them
yeah.
anymore.
I think I
He
remember an interview where he talked about you wanting to stop.
he did the Milton cartoon that eventually made its way into the Office Space movie
Hmm.
and, the stapler guy. And he's just a great observer of characters, just funny guy and great way and doing all the voices. And and so humble.
I love the story that he tells in one of his interviews about his neighbor and how that was an inspiration for one of the main characters. Those of you listening to this, you need to go look that up on YouTube and listen to that Mike Judge interview talking about one of his neighbors. It's hilarious. So,
Yeah, yeah.
wow, that's great. So now when this short film wins, right, at SeaGraph, you
Mm-hmm.
guys get the news. What next? Like, what'd you guys do? When did things start to become a reality that you had to really, shore things up in a new way and hit go?
Well, so that's when we're contacted by Steve Odekirk and him asking to partner with us and take it out to Nickelodeon. And I remember everything moving so fast at first. Like, we're out there pitching to Nickelodeon. And before we do that, we go to the William Morris agency and they're talking about our short film and like, isn't it amazing? And if you see it now, you just go, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But back then, I guess, it was sort of showed some promise. But just being on at the William Morris agency and, seeing all these guys, in suits and ties and agents and
Talking about your
running around
project, yeah.
and then we go into this conference room that I am not kidding you, felt like it was as big as a football field. They're on one side, like at the 50-yard line, and we're in the end zone and talking back and forth about, okay, we want to represent you and blah, 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 blah. And we had a guy managing us at the time. And, I just wanted to make sure it was like, are you okay with this? And he's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They'll do this thing. I'll do this thing. And we can work together and make, great things happen for you guys. And so anyway, it was just a whirlwind. And then what happens is go there. We meet with Nickelodeon. They can't wait to get started. And 5 years later, we start on it.
Yeah. Wow.
It gets lost in the black hole of the legal department. And, it's like, oh my gosh, I hope technology doesn't pass us by in the
Yeah, and you're trying
meantime.
to figure out if is this really going to happen? When did
Yeah.
Paramount get involved? When did all of that happen? Because I remember I was a Paramount. I remember Paychecks and all that. There was a company called
Mm-hmm.
Neutronium, and then there were the DNA people that were full-time DNA, and then there was us. When did they get involved? And when that was, I guess, 5 years later when that started to really pick up.
Originally, we pitched it to Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was like, yes, let's go. And then I think it was John Davis that said, hey, you know what we should do? We should do a movie first and then take those assets and port them over to a television series, which nobody had been doing. And we can use those assets for the television series and it'll look just like the movie. They're like, that's a great idea. Stop everything. Oh no, don't stop everything. Because, we're there with our pens ready to sign and, oh, great. And so that's why it took 5 years. It's, and so what I tell people is, be patient. This takes time. It takes as long as it takes. And there's no, quick and easy way to the finish line. It's just, you run the distance that you're setting out to do and it takes as long as it takes,
Yeah, and it's never going
and
to be perfect, and you're going to make
no,
mistakes, and you've got to just take that step, and that's always scary.
exactly.
But I do think that sometimes you just have to go and be persistent, like you mentioned. All right, so 5 years, is there, firing on all cylinders, and you're hiring people. I think it took me 3 months to get hired because one of the lighting directors, and I don't know if it was just because he wanted to test me or if it was him just putting me through the ringer. But I did so many lighting tests, and it was like 3 months later. And I'll never forget when producer Gina Shea called me to tell me that I was being brought on to work on the movie. And I think the world of her. And she, I guarantee, does not remember me, but I remember that phone call. And then I remember when we're working on the movie, just how, she cared about what we did. She threw us a huge party when there was a rewrite and we had to go through all this stuff. We were working. She goes, hey, if you guys do this, we'll throw you a big party. And she did. And it was awesome. But when all that was going on, all those different people coming into play, all the producers and all of the people at the various companies and legal department, What was that like? How are you making decisions? How are you staying focused on the overall vision of the movie? How was John during that time? Can you talk about your relationship with John and how you guys worked as a team? Because we saw you guys and we listened when you talked with us, but what was that like when all of that was going on?
It was challenging because we had always been, at least in terms of in office, we were the people you'd go to if you had a question or a problem. And now there were other people from other companies in our office. For me, it was a little bit challenging just because I wasn't used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I always handled it the best way possible. I learned so many lessons because I designed a lot of the characters for Jimmy along
You and John
with
are in the movie
Paul.
as characters. Yeah.
Yeah, but Paul and I, Paul Clarehout and I designed a lot of the characters. In fact, all the characters, I think. And we had some, different ethnicities in the film. And we actually had an ethnic diversity consultant that we had to send character designs to. And at first I'm like, what? And I've never done this before. And I learned eventually, hey, you know what? I'm just going to really make them feel involved in this and respected because, well, number one, that's just the way you should do people. But also, I think that's all they want. They just want to be listened to and respected. This is a doctor and they, went through all that they went through to become this person, this go-to person for a big company. And, I'm going to show them the respect they deserve. And as soon as I did that, I didn't have one more note, not another note.
Well,
And it was just, it was so eye-opening. I've never forgot that. And, I try to take that with me everywhere I go is that just listen to what they have to say and then take it and try to work together. And if it works, then good, they were right. And if it doesn't work, then okay, well, let's keep trying. Let's make sure we use the time we have to be productive and not I hate any kind of us versus them. We're all in the same company. We're trying to make a product as great as it can be.
later on, we worked in an organization where growing very, very fast, and there were a lot of
Yeah.
personalities. And I remember working with you, and you were the same back when I worked with you in my 20s, where you would listen, and we could get to the solution a lot faster, even when we failed at something, faster because we weren't trying to outperform one another. I was just so grateful to get to work with you again. That
Well,
was
see, and I
amazing.
felt the same way. I was grateful to get to work with you because and this is not just because you're here, but anyone I've talked to about you, extremely smart and extremely professional. I mean, you, I know you might attribute some of what you carry forward through me, but it is equally me taking from you that your professionalism, the way, and I just see the way people look up to you, and I, I admire that kind of respect. I mean, you don't do anything you don't demand it, you earn it. And I
Thank
think
you.
that's one of the things that it's like, okay, there are things you'll nod your head and you'll go, okay, I'm going to take that with me but it's a two-way street. I just want to say that
Well, that means a
eh,
lot to me. I've had conversations even with my kids because that's always a learning experience where I try to put others before me. I always have, and my father taught me that. My mom taught me that. I've learned a lot of that through my wife. Watching her interact, um, and I just think it's important. But when you make those mistakes and you have that feeling like that didn't go well. I don't like how that feels. I don't like how I made that individual feel. And then now I feel like the relationship is splintered. That's not good. I just know when I have a conversation with somebody, even when it's about something difficult, and we did some really difficult and complex things in the company I was working for before I, worked for the organization with now. There were some tough moments, and there were some tough projects, and there was some tough personalities, people I respected for the skills and the knowledge that they had, but the dynamics could get very, very rough. And so whether it's that or going back to Richland College, working with students that are relying on you, some of them, their parents were working 2 or 3 jobs. They were so grateful to be in a classroom learning animation or learning gaming. And I paid attention to that. And so that was a motivator for me. And I was like, you know what, these experiences along the way, whether it's at Richland or other companies or even in production, I have little snapshots of memories, and those ended up being lessons. And I use them to guide, my decision making, just like I did when I was building the program. I mentioned it on my first podcast, but I take that very seriously. And if people see that as authentic and genuine, and how you just described it, I'm unbelievably grateful for that, because there are days that I don't get it right. And I'm like, good grief, Jeremy, where'd that come from? And I get to start over and try again. There's so much noise and negativity. I mean, you turn on the TV or the radio, and there's just so much negativity. And somebody reached out to me after they saw episode 1 and said, I love the positivity that this is exhibiting. And I said, well, that was kind of the goal. I want to do more of this, and it's not all going to be perfect. I said, I just want to tell the stories of others and let people hear the impact that they had on not only myself, but things that maybe I've even heard before. I want to have everyday people that are those quiet heroes that inspire a kid to go to college. All of that stuff, I think it matters, especially with the magnitude of media that comes through the phone, TV, radio, all these different production studios. And it's such a wide spectrum of content that it gets overwhelming. And I mean, it gets saturated really, really quick. And so if I can provide a piece of media and tell some funny stories and go back in time and meet new people and have a positive impact,
Mhm.
again, that's what I'm trying to do here.
And you are. I think you are. Yeah,
I
and it's
appreciate that.
coming from a good place because I know a lot of this is inspired by your dad, who had a huge impact on you. So I think what you're doing is amazing. And it's funny because when I think about all the projects I've done up to this point, I finally feel like I found the genre of uh, projects that I really want to do, and
Mhm.
do it in such a way that it does have impact. It does impact young people and families, and in older people as well. But I've been working for the last uh, 10, 11 years, mostly on faith-based animation and directing,
Excellent.
writing, directing. Um, Started out in 2014 working on a project called Allegories, but
Okay.
Owl,
Yeah. Yeah.
OWL.
Yeah. Yeah.
And been working on that for the last 11 years. Um, and I also have been very fortunate to work on a project that is a spin-off from a really popular live action series called The Chosen.
Okay.
And we just finished season 1 of the animated spinoff that centers around these 2 children and their encounters in day-to-day life in, first century Capernaum, and, life on the Sea of Galilee and things like that. Um, and then also just, encounters and lessons with Jesus. And so those 2 projects have been a huge blessing for me, and I'm so grateful that I got to do that. I'm kind of at the age and the point in my career where I want to do things that mean something, do
Yeah.
something that matters.
Yeah.
And, it was, great doing commercials and other things that taught people about, product safety and things like that. But to be able to do something that means a lot to me and hopefully will mean something to other people. I mean, The Chosen has been an enormous success. And it's like a global thing. I mean, they're just, I think they're still shooting season 6 of the series. And it's, the story of Jesus as seen through the eyes of others, such as his disciples, his mother, other people that lived there during the time. And it just a wildly successful series. So this is more for the younger audience. I mean, younger kids are probably not going to gravitate toward the live action series as much.
So is there a relationship there as far, are you in ties with the live action version with that, and they were inspired by this and then this started developing and they're like, yes, let's do it? Like, can you
well,
talk a little bit about that? Like, kind of a quick overview?
yeah, we got involved probably around season 3 with the spinoff. So there were 3 seasons to draw from. And the actors, such as the actor that plays Jesus and Andrew and John and Mary Magdalene, all those are the actors from the live action series. But it like I said, it revolves more around a little girl named Abby and a little boy named Joshua, and just their day-to-day life. And probably half the time they have encounters with Jesus and he teaches them valuable life lessons, that help them deal with an issue they're having. And I feel like it's visually and in terms of the writing and the music, and it's the same composers as the live action series. I feel like it's the best thing I've ever been a part of. So
Wow. I think that's really, really special, especially with the storytelling that you guys are focused on. The stories of Jesus. It's incredible. I can't wait to see it.
yeah, and just so you know, it's going to premiere on Amazon Prime October 17th and YouTube December 1.
Okay, December 1 on YouTube and October 17th on Amazon Prime. And the title is
The Chosen Adventures.
The Chosen Adventures. Well, we will look forward to that. That is going to be incredible. Maybe in a future episode, you could reach out to some of those greats that you mentioned, the Paul Clarehouse or John Davis. Would love to see that storytelling with 3 of you on this podcast. I would love to host you guys.
I'd love to do it with the 3 of us because it would just be so much fun to see them. But because John's in Tucson now, Paul's in Burbank. He's working at Bob's Burgers, so I know he's somewhere close.
Yeah. Tell me about,
Walking
because you
distance.
sent me a link. Tell me some of the things that he's been releasing on YouTube, and I'll have to put the links in the podcast. But tell me about some of that content that I've seen Paul release from the old DNA Productions days and some of the old.
Yeah, some of our old demo reels that I actually don't have copies of, and he has copies of. I, I don't know where he got them. I guess they're old DVDs, and he ripped a MP4 from them and put them up on YouTube on DFW Cartoon Show channel.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's amazing to see some of the old stuff we did that I forgot about. I'll see it and go, when did I work on that?
You want some entertainment? Go watch those videos, and it'll amaze you. Keith is
Well,
a voice actor as well.
that's because we had to be. I mean, we actually did the music we did music composition, we did voices, we would do writing, for our clients that would say, sure, you go ahead and do it. you know and we would do it all just because we enjoy doing it, plus it saved us money if we did it all
Yeah,
ourselves.
yeah.
And John's a guy that plays a lot of things musically. I play percussion, and Paul Clarehout plays things. He plays the fiddle, and so we had this tiny little, orchestra that could do things, not especially well, but we did them. And they, and some of them are fun to look back on. You go, oh, wow, I can't
Yeah,
believe
I love
we
looking at, yeah, it's
old
great.
stuff that you did and
Yeah.
you don't remember. And,
What was the
but
one, the phone ranger? Is that
the
right?
Phone Ranger, yeah. And working with our old friend John Kepke as the Phone Ranger. And then for some reason, I was always the bad guy, it seems like. But it was just so much fun to do those things. And we always wanted to do entertainment. So it gave us a chance to just, hey, let's just do all of it. And if they approve it, then we're good and we'll make any changes they want. And we had some really great clients that would let us have fun and be silly. And it was successful for them because they were finding that, especially when you're watching safety films and stuff, young people like, I don't want to watch some live action guy up there talking
Yeah.
about here's how you handle this high voltage wire. But they would watch an animated character. It was fun.
I remember in DFW, there was the Western Warehouse commercials. It was the got a ranch in downtown Dallas, buy
Hmm.
diamonds by the ton,
That's
all
right.
that,
That's right. And
and then
it's,
Westway Ford, there was all of these animations that were going on back then. It was all just,
and
hand drawn and
yeah.
lo-fi.
Yeah, but the thing is, you remembered them because that's one of the things that I feel like we've gotten away from is that, music and memorable visuals, whether it's good or bad, you will remember it. And, I mean, just like, Westway Ford. I mean, I don't even know if they exist anymore, but
Yeah, they're
those in
still
my
around.
head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different building, but yeah, they're still right in the same spot. But yeah, all those animations back then, as a kid, you look at it, you're like, well, how'd they do that? And the old Sesame Street and Electric Company, and the reason why people know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they know because of the visuals and then the song, and those are artists and storytellers behind those ideas, and you know, they're teaching something or they're advertising something. Keith, I cannot thank you enough. Is there anything else? I've got a couple little quick hit questions that I want to ask you because I know there are some Jimmy Neutron fans that are watching this, and you've done all these amazing things. You're working on this new project and this incredible passion that you have for this new project that you're working on now. We can't wait to see it. But do you mind if I ask you a couple questions about Jimmy specifically? Okay, and we'll do these kind of quick hits, right?
Sure.
Patrick Stewart, what was he like? That dynamic working with Martin Short. What was Patrick Stewart like? And what did John think when he realized, huge Trekkie fan, right? I mean, he loved
Oh,
Star Trek.
good grief.
When that
He
happened,
was an enormous fan. And
yeah,
so we would watch Star Trek and it's like, there's Patrick Stewart and we're watching, the series, never thinking that one day we would get to work with him.
oobla.
That's right. And, and so when we, started working on the Neutron movie and they would say, well, who do you want for this part? And who are you thinking for this part? And I think that's probably John's first choice on both. And, we got them both. And Patrick Stewart, nicest guy you can imagine. I mean, humble. He would even hang out with us after his session was over and we were recording Martin Short. He would hang out and talk to us.
Oh, that's great.
And I guarantee you, if I'd said, hey, Patrick, you want to go get something to eat? He would have gone.
Yeah. Didn't he, at one point, you saw him again at retakes and he remembered your name and was asking about your family, right?
Yes, he came in months later to we'd done some rewrites and he came in to re-record and he looked back at me and said, hey, Keith, I didn't say hi. He did. And I'm like, how does he remember me? And I had told him the first time we met about my wife's mom living with us. And then he says, how's your mother-in-law? And like, are you
Wow. Yeah.
doing? How do you remember this stuff? And just the sweetest, most considerate, thoughtful guy. And I mean, like zero ego. He just loved to talk and visit. And, he was just wanted to get to know us.
Yeah.
That's the way I felt,
Yeah, it was incredible. And I remember my kids have asked me, Dad, what's your favorite scenes? And they know that I worked on the Hello Toast, when Martin Short's talking to the toast,
Yeah.
plotting those scenes. And I love those shots. But the dynamics and the banter that was going back and forth, and we're listening to all the voiceovers, and the character of the aliens and of the kids, that was a lot of fun. And you had to you woke up every morning going, I get to go work in a movie today. I get to go
I,
learn from somebody else. I get to
I
go do
get to
this.
go work on a cartoon.
So, best memory of working at DNA when you guys realize that you get the call and you're getting nominated for an Academy Award against Shrek and Monsters Incorporated. And I remember something that happened, that day when everybody found out about it. But can you walk us through that? What was that like? Because we had a premiere in Dallas. It was amazing. And seeing you and John down at the front of the stage talking about, hey, I want to show you a movie, and I just remember that comment. I want to show you a movie. And knowing that it was Oscar nominated against those two films, out of the box software compared to studios that were using stuff that they designed. What was that like? What was that feeling like? I mean, what an incredible honor when that happened.
Well, I'll say this. I remember so vividly the day that they were announcing the Oscars nominees. And for some reason, my wife Mary had that on television as we're getting our son ready for school. And I'm like, oh, hey, oh, look, they're about to announce the best animated feature. And it's funny because our our manager and our agent, left us a message like they were both on the phone at the same time. And they were saying, best of luck. I think that was being announced on Monday or something. And, best of luck Monday morning and this and that. Hope you get nominated and thinking of you, all this stuff. And then for some reason, the phone didn't hang up and they continue talking. And then you hear what they really think. And like, do you think they're going to really get nominated? No, I don't think they have a chance. And blah, blah,
You can
blah.
hear this? You can hear this happening?
It's as vivid as my voice right now
I
because
love
they
it.
thought they hung up and they didn't. And John and I are listening to the whole message and my gosh, this is great. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And they just go on and on how we don't have a chance. And they're not going to nominate. They're not going to nominate 3 CGI films because it was Monsters Inc. and Shrek, and they'll probably do Waking Life or they'll do something else and something 2D. They're not going to do 3 CGI films. And then Monday morning happens and they're going, and now the nominees for best animated feature. And I go, well, maybe they'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll be in the middle maybe. And then because they went in alphabetical order, we were first. And they go, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. And I'm looking at it and I'm like,
Am I
what?
awake?
And I don't even get excited because I can't believe it.
Yeah.
But in
Wow.
the background, Mary is screaming bloody murder, just beside herself. I've never heard her scream like that since. And what's happening? And all of a sudden the phone rings and our son who's in kindergarten, he's like, what's happening? What's wrong with this house? And, it's just chaos. And I'm like, and I answer the phone and like, hello. And God, we can't believe it. Can you believe it? Like, and Mary's jumping all over the place. And I'm like,
Incredible.
what has just happened? And then from that point on, everything changed. It was just 3 seasons of Jimmy Neutron and multiple Annie Awards and things like that you get nominated for. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. And the journey there to
And it
get
kept
there
going.
was, yeah.
The energy of Jimmy Neutron during that time was incredible because nobody knew about Jimmy Neutron, then everybody knew about Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
And it was
Who
everywhere.
are these guys?
Who are these guys? And
Yeah.
you go to the store and you're seeing socks and these various
Well,
things.
okay. One of the coolest things for me, because I am a huge Jay Ward fan. Jay Ward did Rocky and Bullwinkle and George of the Jungle, Super Chicken, all this stuff. And just amazing, amazing, funny, funny, funny guy. And he also was the designer and the animation director and the production company for Captain Crunch. All the old Captain Crunch. Those were the things I studied the most. Captain Crunch
Well, the
was
cereal commercials were
just,
great.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
great,
Yeah. Great.
great, great. And so when I went to the store and saw Jimmy Neutron, and I still got a box. It doesn't have cereal in it, of course, but I've got a box of Jimmy Neutron right there next to a bowl of Captain Crunch with Captain Crunch on his side, to the side of him. They're standing there looking in a bowl of gigantic cereal.
You're
And
like, how does this happen?
and there he is on Lunchables. It's like, what has happened? I'm in
Yeah.
the store by myself and I'm like, this is so weird. But then, I just realized, don't let it go to your head. It's just a thing, and put your head down, keep working. It's a job,
Mhm.
just get your work done. It's fun, to look at it and think, wow, we actually did something that's kind of fun. And kids would email me and stuff, and that's a whole other podcast. I'll see if I can get John and Paul and see if we could do something all together.
Oh, I guarantee the viewers would love it. I would love it. I'd love to see them. John messaged me a couple of years ago. I think it was on
Oh,
Facebook.
that's
He was
great.
doing
That's
some new
great.
projects, some star
Yeah.
photography. Obviously, Bob's Burgers, and
Yeah.
seeing the stuff that Paul's releasing online and YouTube is amazing. I would love that. I'd be incredibly grateful, and I think people would enjoy it. Well, it absolutely was the best job I ever had, and
Thank you.
I look back, and I am very serious about that. And I've been blessed to work with some amazing companies and
Oh, yeah, I know.
impact people, and people have believed in what I've been working on, and that keeps driving me. But during that time, it was like working in a fun house, and it was one of my best jobs. The environment, looking around, and like, oh wow, that person just finished Toy Story 2, and that person over
Mhm.
there just finished Shrek. But Paul Chang sat right behind
Oh,
me
yeah,
in the
yeah,
lighting studio,
yeah.
and when I discovered that he was a painter and seeing the things that he was doing, I was always kind of looking at his work. And then one day we started talking, and I haven't talked to him in years, but his oil paintings and the stuff that he has, a lot of the Western art that he has been painting,
Mhm.
amazing. That was so
Amazing.
inspiring back
Yeah.
then to see that level of talent, because that's the stuff that we would see on the behind the scenes on a VHS tape or a DVD, where you see the artist in the background, maybe at DreamWorks or Fox Animation Studios or wherever it
Mhm,
was, 20th Century
mhm.
Fox, that just was inspiring. And then to be in that room with somebody with that much talent, it was incredible.
Yeah, and they're so humble. I mean, when
So humble.
when you get to talk to them, some of the nicest people I ever met were the most talented artists.
I can name several that just
Oh,
were
yeah. We
unbelievably
had some
kind.
amazing artists
Yeah.
there at that time,
Yeah.
and just the sweetest guys and gals that, you just loved talking
Yeah.
to.
Well, again, Keith, I cannot thank you enough for being here. So many stories, so many details. I mean, we could have 4 episodes of this with your experience in production, animation, all the wonderful talent that you've had the opportunity to work with, collaborate with, the impact you've had on me and the people I've learned from. So, remind us again of your current project and when it's getting released.
Yeah, it is The Chosen Adventures. It is an animated spin-off from the series The Chosen, and it will premiere on Amazon Prime on October 17th, and then it goes live on YouTube December 1.
Fantastic. How exciting. I know
Yeah, I'm
that
really
this is
excited.
a passion for you. Yeah, I
I
can.
want you to see it, and I want you I feel like it's really visually and in terms of storytelling, musically, it's just the most amazing thing I've ever worked on.
I will eagerly be looking for that, anticipating, every episode. And again, I cannot thank you enough when you agreed to do this. And, one, just the encouragement that you've given me over the years, especially when I shared the idea with you that I was going to be launching this series. And I'm just very grateful for your time and the impact you've had on me
My
because it's
pleasure.
very, very special.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right. You too.
See ya.
See ya.